What happens after years of a successful career when your company suddenly informs you that your compensation going forward is going to be tied to such vacuous things as your DEI and ESG performance? Well, that's exactly what the folks at Disney Advertising Sales found out a few years ago. The Walt Disney Company has its next earnings call on Wednesday, August 9th, and they had better be prepared to answer some serious questions during that Q&A that comes after the scripted portion of that call. As it stands right now, people have a lot of angst about what Disney is set to report, considering guidance coming forward from the previous quarter, and the fact that parks have not been doing so well this summer. Then, of course, there's also the added bonus of movies flopping left and right coming out of various Disney studios. But as we've been covering recently here on Valiant Renegade, articles like this coming from places so vaunted as the Wall Street Journal, and this isn't the only one they've written of this nature, wokeness hobbling Disney as it faces the streaming challenge. There are numerous financial publications that are seemingly showing Disney no mercy right now, and I can't blame them. Now, as we've seen in recent weeks, some companies are eliminating these DEI executive positions. Some of Wall Street may actually be waking up to the fact that these positions in corporate America are largely worthless and do little more than to serve to be an impediment to actual commercial operations, causing issues for companies far and wide. Just look at Target and Bud Light if you don't believe me. And of course, let's not forget the Walt Disney Company itself, who, even though they released their DEI chief, LeTondra Newton, in recent weeks, that doesn't mean that Disney is going to change course. What you're about to see is a continuation of the conversation that began this morning on WDW Pro's YouTube channel. This is part 2, where we dive into the more detailed impacts of what this had on what was, and still is in many cases, one of the greatest ad sales teams in corporate America. Disney ad sales is a huge force that is tasked constantly with being able to fill advertising slots on places like ABC, Hulu, FX, and so on, and nowadays even Disney+. But the team at Disney Ad Sales may have suffered the DEI impacts of Disney more than anyone else, even right down to constant ongoing monitoring of their own social medias or historical searching of social medias, to the point where they were brought in for re-education sessions if Disney in the DEI department there found them guilty of wrongthink. And if you think that story sounds all too familiar, just ask Gina Carano. She can tell you all about it with her sessions at Lucasfilm. See, this is a systemic problem at the Walt Disney Company, and one that's not likely to walk out the door anytime soon, even though its former chief diversity officer already has. That doesn't mean the program's going away. Bullying an actress for having an opinion that you don't like is one problem unto itself, but it's a whole nother can of worms when you as a company do the same thing to your entire ad sales staff. These are the people that generate the billions of dollars a year in ad sales revenue to the Walt Disney Company that is its lifeblood. And just maybe there are some shareholders out there that might want to ask Disney a few questions about why anything is being put above and beyond profitability and returns to the investors. Online. This is bad. This is really bad. That Disney has knowingly come in and sunk one of the greatest advertising cabals in the industry with this kind of crap. Even to the point where advertisers are turned away because they did not fit the mold as a company. They weren't doing enough DEI. Their ESG score wasn't high enough.
And this is a problem.
To jump in.
This is a problem that compounds over time, too, because if you're somebody looking to buy ad space, part of the reason that you're wanting to do it with Disney is because you have all these eyeballs that are supposedly going to be hitting your product. If you're subjecting that company to some kind of a purity test, I don't know why anybody trying to purchase advertising wouldn't just say, this is too much hassle. I'll take my business somewhere else. You get less word of mouth about whatever your product is, fewer eyeballs on the screen. It's just you have Disney valuing their platform at a level that it's no longer meeting. And when you're turning ad dollars away, this is insane. That can only rocket downhill. They can't react fast enough to it either, because you'd have to pull these programs out and replace them with something. It's insanity.
Yeah.
And then what we're told is that this was so bad that the Disney sales reps would actually be the ones who ended up filling out these purity tests that were given to the folks who wanted to buy ads, because it was so embarrassing to try to send these to these advertisers, and beg them, hey, can you prove that you're pure enough to be on our platform? And so the Disney reps then would be the ones who filled this out on behalf of the advertisers to try to hide the fact that their company had went insane. Now, I'd like to read from some notes that Jonas J. Campbell has. He is not here with us in this video. He was in the video on my channel earlier today. Could not make it for the second part, but Jonas is working on an article on thatparkplace.com that will fully expose all this and put it in an easy-to-read format. Now, part of what we do when a source comes forward is we protect that source with everything we have, and that rises to different levels depending on what the source needs. But also, we take copious notes. And Jonas has done an excellent job. So here's what we have in specificity, what we're talking about for those out there who would like this high resolution. Disney advertising sales had a $100 million advertising goal with DEI and multicultural programming. So that means that the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, is part of that group. But if the program is not part of the DEI multicultural categories, then it's not included in that $100 million revenue goal. Now, the consequence of that, of course, is that if you are an ad agent trying to sell ads for programs, it's in your interest to sell and prioritize sales for DEI and multicultural programming, whatever that might mean for Disney.
Because Disney was guaranteeing you the highest payouts if you did that. They were forcing you into that. There was no equivalency across the board. It was, you have to do this. If you want to get your full payout, you have to engage in this. And
then on top of that, what we need to say here, and I want to give, we need to give the qualification that I cannot independently verify this. I cannot corroborate it. I am simply a messenger for the whistleblower in this regard. I am told that folks out there who think that Disney is going to step away from DEI or from this very woke agenda, that they should Google Rita Farrow, DEI. I'll leave it there. I have no comment beyond that, and I have no personal opinion or thought regarding that phrase at all. It's just simply what's been sent our way. Finally, Jonas has in his notes that in regards to the idea that Disney leadership was saying DEI was bringing in record revenues, it was all smoke and mirrors. We're not going to go into exactly how it was smoke and mirrors at this time, but suffice to say that clients of Disney did not have piles of dedicated budgets for DEI and multicultural programming.
This is a follow-up to the tremendous work by Christopher Rufo a year and a half ago on the Reimagine Tomorrow program. We are now adding the actual dollars and business finance to Christopher Rufo's story from a year ago. This has been going on. And to Pro's point, I say we have a screen share. Disney's Rita Farrow aims to triple upfront Disney diversity commitments. Now, let me explain what this means for the audience out there so they understand in the Hollywood business ad lingo. When you're talking about upfronts, this is what Disney and Warner and Comcast, Universal, all these big studios, all these big broadcasters, linear, streaming, Netflix now that they're in the ad game. What upfronts are is when you go out, and there is an upfronts season every year, and our source is, I'm sure, very well aware of this. This was probably his biggest time of the year. The upfronts are when you go out and you sell upfront your slate coming for the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever the case may be, for your particular ad sale season. Your upfronts are pre-engaged commitments that you're going out and soliciting from advertisers. Now, obviously, upfronts are huge for stuff like live sports, right?
You want to upfront an NFL season. You want to upfront the NBA. You want to upfront the MLB, the NHL, all that kind of stuff. You want to upfront sell as much of those live sport broadcasts as possible. You also want to upfront big shows that you know you have coming up. Look at things like Yellowstone, for example. You know you can upfront that show because that's a massive draw, right? So when you do upfronts, you want to pre-sell your content. You're selling this to prospective advertisers and saying, all right, come on in. Come on in. Look at all the stuff we got. This is what we want you to buy. This is what we think it's worth. Do you want to commit? Now, the problem is when you start injecting the DEI, quote unquote, stuff that Disney was pushing out, all right? These were not programs that had any proven track record. These were things that, in large cases, gave advertisers pause because Disney had, as Pro just mentioned, this $100 million goal, according to our source, to sell for this type of content. And the advertising execs out there were a little apprehensive about being able to hit such a goal because, look, it's easy to sell $100 million in sales if we're selling Yellowstone or if we're selling the SEC on ESPN. We can do that in a day. But this other stuff, you know, you want us to sell millions of dollars of stuff for the Proud family, for God's sake, good luck. And again, these advertisers, if they got them engaged to say, okay, we'll throw some money at this. Oh, wait, not just yet. Thank you for committing to actually want to advertise on the DEI content that Disney is pushing. But we need you to go through a screening first to make sure that your money is clean enough to come in and buy ads on the show. This is the kind of crazy that Disney engaged in. And as Pro correctly mentioned, if you think the fact that they released LeTondra Newton from service, who oversaw all of this and pushed all of this with the Reimagine Tomorrow program, not only socially at Disney, but now we know monetarily at Disney with advertising. If you think the DEI is going away, don't kid yourself. LeTondra Newton fell on the sword to make people think things were getting better, particularly advertisers. But I have a feeling it's not. But we saw Dana Walden for the last couple of years. She was named as the co-chair along with Alan Bergman for Walt Disney Studios. She and Alan Bergman are basically second chair right behind Bob Iger. This is back in April of 2021, and this is exactly the era that we're talking about, where ABC passed on pilots for their television broadcast network for not being inclusive enough. And according to sources that we've talked to, these pilots, some of these shows, and even Dana Walden suggests these were some of the best shows they had seen in years as far as writing, but Disney refused to buy them. Disney refused to greenlight the shows because they were not diverse or inclusive enough.
Let's talk about that for a moment, Valiant, because
Go for it.
It's a little bit, it's almost sinister, I would say. And the reason I say that is because if you want to hit $100 million advertising revenue goal for DEI programming, one way you can do that is to eliminate non-DEI programming. So you make sure that there are no non-diverse programs available. Now, what do we mean when we say non-diverse? White. That's what we mean by that, right? We mean European, essentially. So if you eliminate those shows, then it's much easier to hit your 100 million goal. And then at the same time, they take this this proof then that DEI is working by virtue of the fact that they're eliminating non-DEI from their portfolios. You take that then to your institutional investors and you say, look at our DEI numbers. We are doing fantastic. We're doing great. And guess what? May not be the reality that the company is living in.
Exactly.
Right? You've created a false positive.
You can really manipulate numbers, and even as our source has alluded to, which surprises me not at all, is that, you know, if you are setting a goal for your staff, we need $100 million in this. It's very easy with all of the different facets in the arms that Disney has. between linear broadcast, over-the-air broadcast, streaming services like Hulu and ESPN Plus, that you can, to an extent, tell any story that you want to tell to your ad executives and everybody else out there that, oh, look, we got this. We hit the numbers. Because there's so much minutia and so much craziness inside of how all these numbers coalesce in the way that they report them. And I want to be clear, as far as like the public reporting, the SEC filings, I am not suggesting that Disney is doing anything illegal or nefarious with that. I don't think they are. I don't think they are at all. The issue is that when they do public reportings and public filings, like the earnings calls that we're going to cover here shortly in a couple of weeks, the SEC does not require a company to guide down to every single penny of revenue or income or journal entry that they have in there. They just don't. So it's very easy for Disney to make a statement like, this was our parks and resorts revenue. Now, we don't have a breakdown necessarily of what came from Disneyland versus Disney World. We don't have a breakdown of how much money was spent at the Grand Floridian versus the Polynesian. We don't know how much the Hong Kong park made versus the Japanese park. It's just wrapped up in a big number. And so is the same with advertising revenue when they do these on these financial reports. So it's very easy to bury the lead, as it were, in this case. But one of the things that we have noticed, one of the things that we have been covering on Valiant Renegade now for some time, is the fact that Disney ad revenue, at least at a macro level, along with places like Warner Brothers and Comcast and everybody else that we've talked about, they've all suffered this past 12 months of advertising revenue on the decline due to inflation, due to a secular shift or a secular headwind, as the market calls it, where people are cutting the cords and moving to streaming. And even the source talked about, everybody asked about Hulu. They all wanted to be on Hulu. They all wanted to get into Hulu. But what happened? Disney would try to shift that focus. Yeah, you can be on Hulu. That's all great. But we need you to support the Proud Family. We need you to support this. We need you to support that. And, you know, there were certain companies that always showed up at the last minute. These are the kind of things that you'll never see on an earnings report, folks. And this is the problem. This gets down into the nitty-gritty of the fact that, yes, advertising sales have been down across the board for everybody. But I have had a sneaking suspicion, looking at the numbers in the past year, that Disney has seemingly suffered more than their peer group. Just as we've noticed recently that the Walt Disney Company has suffered more than their peer group in the theme parks and resorts. And I think we're going to find that out on Wednesday, August 9th. Much more so suffering by Disney than compared to their closest competitor at Comcast. So
I remember that article about Dana Walden. And I remember when that dropped and she basically said, you know, we got these great scripts, but they weren't inclusive enough for us.
Yeah.
So we're going to pass on that. So I'm thinking, okay, so let me get this straight. You had some great entertainment that you basically deemed was pretty freaking good, but because of it doesn't meet what you consider to be inclusive, then you want to pass on that. One, it's extremely stupid, number one. Two, why are you going to pass something up like that so you can basically virtue signal to the rest of the world? Yes, see, aren't we great? We're not going to take any of these things that don't do diversity and inclusion the way we would like to. See, we're good people, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're great. We're giving you all these diverse characters and diverse storylines, but you know, we're going to reject things that don't line up with that. So what that tells me is you're not really looking for quality product to put on your platform. The type of products that Disney was known for. I just had a watch party. We were actually watching Aladdin from '92. And looking at this like, man, remember we were just watching this and it was just great entertainment and people like that. Now they've gone away from that to basically, let's see, is it enough Black people in it? Is enough Asian people in it? Is it enough, Latino people in it? Are they Afro-Latino? Are they, what the heck is it? Just, that's what they want to do. So they're so focused on that and on quality that it's no wonder their entertainment is going into the toilet and other companies are picking up the slack. And to go to theme parks, because you guys know I'm out there like all the time.
Mhm.
I keep getting asked on my live streams, why are the Disney parks so empty?
Yeah.
What's going on? I don't get asked that in my Universal streams.
I have noticed that, and you're covering those constantly because you live in the area. You're in these parks every day. And you and I have had this conversation before. If Disney is so concerned with DEI and their content and programming, with all of the race swaps and the silliness they've done that have just made audiences eye roll, and not just white people, Black folks, everybody else.
Everybody.
Like, what's this? Where's my, I'll say it again. Where's my Tiana movie? I'm from New Orleans. Where is my Princess and the Frog movie? I loved it. And I mean, it's like that's the kind of thing that Disney can go into and get that done and satisfy this metric and have these ad executives going, oh, you want us to sell to this or that or the other thing? That, oh wait, we have tons of properties at Disney that can appeal to these audiences. But if you're just making things purely from we need to make these to satisfy a certain socio-political aspect, that's not going to work because people see through this these days. And this is where Disney is failing in my mind. I have a few more thoughts, but Lauren, go ahead. Final thoughts?
Well, I would just say that what we want, at least what I want from the company, is not for the company to be non-diverse. I want the company to care. I don't want the company to set up quotas when it comes to human beings.
Yeah.
We are told by the whistleblower that that advertising is probably not going to hit their goals this year, that they are probably missing those goals, something like 10 to 15%. And,
more.
Yeah, and 70%, of course, we were talking about those upfronts. 70% of the ad total revenue comes from those upfronts.
Yep.
I don't think it's a surprise based on what we've talked about, why they're missing those. I think it comes down to that people are exiting this company. And I think when your consumers leave, then your partners leave as well. But Lauren, I haven't heard from you in a while, and I know you always have the best thoughts, so I will cede the table to you and take it away.
I think it's possible that Disney's crossed the event horizon now. They're at a point now where they're having difficulty maintaining everything. They have had to lay off a whole bunch of people. The parks are suffering because they can't keep the rides running. They're not upgrading. They're not improving.
Amen.
They're not getting quality content out for TV or movies. They're losing money by the boatload, and they need money in order to buy Hulu. I think they're in a situation now where they may not come out of this unscathed. They're going to have to start looking at other ways to raise revenue, and they have to change course, or they're going to bury the company. And if that happens, that means they will have reaped what they sowed. So I guess if that's what happens, they'll serve as an example to everybody else. It may take some time to get there, but I'm starting to feel like things could happen more rapidly than we expect. I think that this next earnings call is going to be very interesting to see how it's received. I don't think anybody is in the mood to hear any more nonsense.